Poser, welcome to 10 Questions, my friend.
Hey, thanks for having me, Jimmy. I've been, was it long-time listener, first-time caller?
Absolutely. No, this is long overdue, brother.
And I know we were trying to get together, end of May? And we just hit the beginning of my summer is the craziest between school wrapping up, shifting my children into summer mode, and then I still coach speech and debate through like the third week of June. So it was right in that transition between all of those things. But I'm glad we were able to sit down today. I'm very excited to join the pantheon of dope people that you've put in the hot seat.
I love it, man. No, and I'm glad to have you on, being a watcher and follower of you. Since you really kind of got started, I think we kind of got started at the same time. Yeah. I think we're about the same age, and so we dig a lot of the same things. So I think this will be a fun conversation. All right, so question one, as you know, is always the same. What or who got you into comics or collecting in general? Doesn't have to just be comic books.
So I think my collecting addiction comes from both of my parents. That my parents grew up in central Pennsylvania, and then my dad joined the military, and they moved all over the place until they ended up back stateside and had me. And they collected all kinds of things from their travels. So they spent a good amount of time in Germany, and my dad has like a big like classic beer stein collection.
Nice.
My mom collects what are the Hummel figurines?
Oh yeah.
And then like she went down the Beanie Baby rabbit hole and all of that stuff. So I ended up getting into comics around like 92, 93 when I went to the one game store in my town that also had a limited selection of comics, and it was actually Magic the Gathering that tangentially got me into comics, because the same place that would sell Magic cards before you could find them at every retailer you can, swing a stick at, had comics. So I remember picking up the 90s X-Men title with X-Men #1. And then I got into the Punisher. And then, like you talked about with No Coast, and I am Journo, you see my Turtles love behind me, my Turtles and my Masters of the Universe. It was finding that there are comics based on the shows that I'm into. So it was nice to go down kind of those rabbit holes, that being somebody who was just already a geek, that I found my one-stop shop to get all of my stuff. And I, from 92, 93 up until graduate, maybe my junior or senior year of high school, bought comics on a fairly regular basis. And then I replaced my love of comics with buying concert tickets. And then in college, right, just everybody knows that college grind where you're virtually living paycheck to paycheck, and then spending that paycheck on booze and other bad life decisions that you should not make unless you are in college. That 4 to 6 year window, that's when you can legally make bad life choices.
That's right. I tell my daughter that all the time. I'm like, look, there's a time and a place for things like that, and it's called college.
That's what I tell my juniors and my seniors who, like, if they get in trouble for, like, if they get caught with weed at school, they'll be like, come on, man. Like, either don't do that here or wait 2 years where it's more socially acceptable.
That's right.
And then I took a big break. And actually, one of the first posts that I wrote on my blog was about my fear of getting back into comics, because the stereotype of the comics community is not people like us who are willing to sit down and talk about anything with anyone. It's, the comic book guy from The Simpsons, or it's, the Steve, Dave, and Brody from Mallrats, that you know, it's the fear of the gatekeepers. And what actually got me, two things got me back in the door. When I knew that House of X and Powers of 10 were coming out and rebooting the X-Men universe, I was like, that seems like an easy point to get back in, the way that they were pitching the story. And then I started seeing a therapist, because after my third kid, you know, it was weird I would have been like 35 at the time, getting diagnosed with an anxiety and panic disorder. She was like, you should find a hobby that's not like you reading the news for work. Go read fiction. And I was like, okay, I'll go read comics, because that's not addicting.
No, not at all.
And then I just kind of went from there, and, you know, haven't stopped reading since then. And it's been nice to kind of live like a kid again in a bit, you know, because when people make fun of me for, you know, collecting Funkos or Legos or collecting comics, it's like, yeah, I'm enjoying my childhood. I got to go play with my toys and not take them out of the box. And I got to, you know, go pick up my funny books. And it's been fun to do that, especially since my students at school know that I'm really into, you know, not just comics, but all kinds of nerd culture things, that it's been nice kind of swapping recommendations with versions of myself from, you know, 20 some years ago, that it's been fun connecting with the new cool nerds, not the boo off the beaten path nerds.
Well, and it's interesting you say that, because you're right. There's always been this kind of stereotype with people who are into nerd culture, right? Like it's a certain type of person, you know, that's into, you know, into nerd culture, and it's not true. And I have found that out probably as much by being on YouTube and immersing myself in this community, that there's all types. I mean, there's professional types, there are athletic types, there are true nerd types, you know, what you would consider nerd, you know, nerd types. I mean, it's all walks of life, and it's incredibly interesting. It doesn't matter. I've said it 1,000 times. It doesn't matter if you're black or white. You know, it doesn't matter if you're Hispanic or Latino or Australian. It's this love of this culture that kind of brings us all together, and it's really cool. And that's, you know, I don't know that I knew that. Maybe I did know that, but I don't know that I really realized it until I got into doing this.
Well, and I agree with you 1,000,000%. And I think even when I started this, you know, there was still kind of that internal perception that people were kind of cliquey, and like, there are the cool elitists around us, right? Where it's like, we know that they know their stuff, that they're kind of snobby and shit, like, or stuff like that. I'll try to not use my
be free. You're free to do what you want to do on
here. But I think, you know, the intersections, I think it's easier to be into a lot of different things, because when comics were more in the margins, now that comics, anime, Dungeons and Dragons, you know, all of these forms of media are now more mainstream than anything else, it's fun to not just find people that you wouldn't guess would be into things, right? Like a couple weeks ago, you interviewed Chris from Journo's Comics, and you take one look at him, right? And if you were to judge that book by its cover, you'd be like, this is going to be a dude that's going to talk to me about like sports and cars, right? And then you like see his room, you see his setup, you listen to that man talk, and he's a walking, talking encyclopedia of all kinds of comic knowledge. So it's been fun, not just meeting people who are into it, but then being able to swap recommendations once you get to know that person, of like, hey, you might like this book, or, ooh, I picked this one up and you thought you might have hated it from the solicitation paragraph, but here's issue 1. I think it's fantastic. And if not, I'll PayPal you $4 to give you your money back. That it's been fun to kind of find this broader global community of nerds, and not just you know, the specific bubble that we might like to live in.
No, absolutely. And it's funny because, you know, Chris, if you honestly, like you said, judge a book by its cover, you don't realize that you're going to get what you get when you sit and talk to him. Like, I mean, I've watched his content for a while, but to really sit and talk to him, dude, he is a sweetheart. Like, he is one of the nicest people. And that's the best part of doing 10 questions is, you know, everybody kind of has their persona, the thing that they do on their channel, but then you get to sit down and actually talk to these people and get to know them. And you realize that we all do love the same thing, but we all come from different places. Yeah. And, you know, I'm a hillbilly. I come from Eastern Kentucky. I'm a hillbilly. This cat's out in, you know, San Francisco. Yeah. You know, I mean, and we have similar interests. I don't know. I just think it's cool. And that's one of the dopest things about the community at large is all this mixed bag, a melting pot of different people who have a similar love. And it kind of brings you all together. You know, I say it 1,000 times and we'll say it again. If the world behaved as the comic book community did, it'd be a whole lot better place.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. It really would. Yeah, no, really. I'm going to make this question too. And it's something you brought up. And so, and I hope you don't mind talking about this. You'd mentioned that, you know, you developed like an anxiety panic disorder, right? And we're seeing a therapist. I experienced something very similar to that in my mid-30s where, and I think it was stress. I don't know, you know, it was stress related, I think. And I don't know. It's not something I talk a lot about because I don't want to. I think at first I was kind of embarrassed that, you know, that it happened to me because I am in business. I have this certain, I guess, you know, the way people look at me out in the community. And that happened to me. Like, I literally thought I was having a heart attack. You know, like we had just had our second kid. We were building a house. We were, you know, I was working. It was crazy. And did the hobby help you with that?
I most definitely that I think, you know, I went from being all out embracing nerd to allowing my life to be consumed by doing a lot of research and, you know, a lot of current event stuff for either debate research as a competitor in high school and college or as a coach. And it gave me that little bit of an escape that, again, you know, you said your peak was around your second kid. Mine was 3-5 months after my third was born. And I very much have this like calm, cool demeanor. Like the me you hear talk in the boring Eeyore voice is the me all the time. And at, you know, work, I'm always somebody who's willing to, you know, raise my hand to do stuff, right? I'm kind of a passive type A personality where it's like I'm willing to do stuff mostly because I don't want somebody else to screw it up and have to follow something dumb. And comics for me kind of did give me that, you know, that escape of that like world to get lost in, that 15 minutes of me time to sit and read a couple of books and just kind of turn my mind off. And then where the hobby plus doing YouTube content helped me, when the world shut down because of the beginning of the pandemic, you know, school became fake. That we saw one class a day for an hour and it was optional. We could not do things to lower kids' grades, only raise them, you know, that they could only work their way up, which are all things that I agree with. But, you know, I lost my window of interaction with people. That was, you know, the only thing that became different from home. So when I'm sitting at home, you know, doing the same thing all day with the same 4 people, that I just randomly decided to take stuff that I was writing about and doing on the blog. And it's like, well, maybe I'll put out some videos and, you know, interact with people that way. And, you know, the rest kind of became this, you know, the world that, you know, we're both living in now. And at times, like, I'm very open in talking about my mental health. And I think a lot of it is because of the, the teacher that, you said you felt extra panic because of the pressure of like, people have this image of me, but oh, holy crap, now I'm broken. And we have this problem of stigmatizing, any kind of mental illness. And I want to make sure the way that I carry myself for my students, like if I'm having a day where the meds aren't hitting right, I'll put something on Google Classroom. I'll post a note outside of my door, like if I'm having like if noise is triggering to me that day. And then I'll have kids who can, if they're afraid to say something to other people, they can look at me and be like, it's a day. And it becomes easier to kind of be this model of how I think we should talk about mental illness, that, you don't have to talk about what your issues are if you don't want to, but it shouldn't be like the first time my principal heard how open I was with my diagnosis with my students. She's like, why are you doing that? That's personal. No, because if they know, they can see the functioning me and they can see the days where I'm struggling, like I can be the walking, talking model to, almost 200 kids a day of it's okay not to be okay, or here's how you can be, here's where you can power through a bad day to then get to your time of unplugging. So the hobby, helped a lot from getting the world to escape in, but then the community has helped a lot, because if there are days where I just go dark on not just YouTube, but any type of social media, people like be like, hey man, are you okay? And it's like, yep, having a couple of days. So it's been nice to see that this is not just a community of people who are engaged in liking the same content, but it's truly a community of care, because, we all now know people who in our day-to-day physical relationships we can turn to and talk to about stuff. But then we also now know that we've got that same cluster of people who can be our support networks online. And I think that that's something that I don't think we predicted the internet to be a productive thing in providing, when we just thought it would be machines for video games and porn. That sure, those things happen, but it's nice to have those connections, that the hobby bringing me to a broader community is something that has kind of helped make the bad days not so awful.
And I appreciate you talking about it, because like I said, it really was for me, because I always kind of was one of those people. I bounced off the wall all the time. I was happy when I was bouncing off the wall, and most productive. And then all of a sudden I just started having these feelings, like this dread and this panic. And then one day, like, I'm not joking, like I thought I was having a heart attack. Like I had, Amy took me to the hospital and everything. And, I ended up coming back, and I really was like, I was embarrassed by it. But what I've realized since then, and I think you articulated it very well, it's not something to be embarrassed by. We all deal with, almost everybody probably deals with some form of mental health issue in day to day, and it's nothing to be embarrassed by. It's just part of life. We do live in a high stress world. There's a lot of stuff going on, and it's interesting you made that point, because I always thought the internet was one of those things, especially social media, that maybe created the stress. Yeah, but you're right. It is almost kind of cathartic to like sit here and talk to you about it, because and I talk to my kids. My wife's a teacher, and she deals with a lot of that stuff at school. And I'm very open with my kids about the stuff I deal with day to day. Hey, here's how I deal with it. Take a minute. But books, comic books and books in general, like I've always read, but I read more now than I ever had, because it is that escape for me. It like you said, I can turn the world off for 15, 20 minutes and escape into this fantasy world, that I love. And it helps calm me down. If I'm having a bad day at work, I'll grab a book and tell my staff, hey, I need 15, and I'll go in and I'll read a book, or read a comic book. So I appreciate you being so open about it, because it is something I think most people deal with. And I think a lot of people are ashamed to talk about, but it's nothing to be embarrassed about.
Yeah, because I think, like you said, now that the more that we get understandings of how the brain works, right? As science advances, we see diagnoses of all kinds of diseases, disorders, things like that go up. That's inevitable, but that's a good thing because now you don't necessarily have to feel like, the crisis was very much, I'm, 34, 35 years old at this point in time. Why the hell did this pop up now? Like, have I been living a lie? Like, I think those moments of like crisis and self-doubt at the beginning, I think are healthy to a degree, because you're like, nope, this is who I am now. Sometimes the light switch turns on and it works. Sometimes it turns on and it flickers. It's inevitable. You have to find those survival and coping strategies. And I think the more you find what works for you, the better version of you become. And that allows you to work with or for or help whomever in any capacity.
Right. No, I love that, man. Thank you for talking about that, because that is something that's the first time it's ever come up on here. But it is something that I do deal with. I wouldn't go as far as to say it's day to day for me. I'm a pretty hard charger, but I do have those days where, like you said, the light switch flickers. The light flickers. I have different days. It just depends on, and I have figured out what my triggers are too. Like you said, noise sometimes is a trigger. Mm-hmm. You figure out what your trigger is. And for me, it's always stress, depending on what I've got going on a day to day in my work life. So cool. All right, let's move on to question 3. I didn't mean to get all serious there, but question 3
here. Good thoughts on 10 questions.
Yes. No. So question 3, and I want to talk about your blog a little bit. Like I want to, because you mentioned kind of how YouTube kind of began, but can you kind of talk about the blog, like how that started and kind of how it moved into YouTube and
yeah. A lot of it was looking for elements of just kind of a cathartic release that, in teaching kids to be public speakers and advocates for what they believe in, and teaching the nightmare that is government classes, in terms of helping kids go through that shit show of a reality. Part of it was like, I just need to find ways to use my voice. And the first book that I ever wrote a review of on the blog was Something is Killing the Children, #1. And I was like, this seems like, I didn't have a pull list at that time. I didn't know what a variant cover was. Like, I was like, I'm going to read this book and talk about the experience and the story. And originally the blog was, I'm just going to write about everything that I'm, or most things that I'm reading, and give like a, 2-paragraph-ish synopsis. And then over time, the blog became like writing about my pull list, writing about books that I was excited about. And then it became, people were emailing me like, hey, you want a preview of a book? Hey, you want to look at this? And it became more of a previews blog. And I've gotten really bad in the last 6 months about like, I'm going to try and write something once a day. And then I'll say that right for 3 days in a row, and then it disappears. But it became this, like, I used to do a lot of reading and writing. I used to do, more creative writing. I was into, like, I did playwriting workshops in middle school and high school, and then just lost all of my creativity to the cold, irrational game of policy debate. And I was like, I need to do this to see if I can re-trigger that part of my brain to find, creativity for me. And the motto that's at the top of the blog is just a guy looking to scream into the void about comics, because that's initially how I started, right? Like, from day one, I never cared if anybody read it. For my YouTube content, initially, I didn't care if anybody watched it. That, I was a chef cooking for my own palate. And if other people were into it, then awesome. And then over time, when I kind of found that I could be a preview community, I could save somebody $5 from not picking up a hype book that is not very good, then it just kind of slowly transitioned over time. And one of the first people to reach out to me about YouTube stuff were Chris and Oscar from Lost in Comics, where they were like, hey, watch our live stream. Hey, do this. Because it was when they were first starting their channel. And then through hanging out in other people's streams and chatting, you know, I was like, I can give this a shot too. And if you look at my first like 3 dozen YouTube videos where I don't know what lighting is, like I look like I'm hiding in a corner getting ready to jump out and murder you. Like it became something where, you know, once you get a comment, once you know that somebody asked about something that you did, then it becomes kind of this like minor, like self-improvement, ego-y kind of thing. Like, I don't want to put out a video that looks like crap. I don't want to do this. So the blog and my YouTube channel for me are still very much about me creating that space where I can either talk about the things that I like, or, you know, I'm still in the unboxing a bunch of stuff, but I can go like, here's people who I trust to give my hard-earned money to. So if you can't go, you know, on a true hunt, then here are people that you can look at to throw some money their way. That it became kind of this element of like, if I'm going to put my name on something, you know, I'm going to be honest with the things that I pick up in any shape or form. And then the best part about the world shutting down was my kids wanting to get involved. So I've got, you know, a handful of videos with 1, 2, or 3 of my children at some point, because they get really excited, you know, more about Funko Pop stuff or Legos. But now that Toby, my oldest, finished kindergarten, he is to the point where reading is more interesting to him. So I've been pulling the Lego Ninjago comic for him. That, you know, once he's able to kind of sit down and have a longer conversation about what he's read, he's like, I want to talk about a book, or I want to talk about a story. So I think it now becomes good self-serving for me as a parent, because now I can ingrain into my children that reading is important. Sometimes you're going to have to read stuff that you don't like, but hey, if you have a book that you like, a character that you like, then I can make sure that they can use reading as a tool for me time, that instead of, you know, watching something or playing something, that they can just kind of sit down and shut down most of their brain, except for what it takes to process the book. So it's been nice to think about how I can use this as a tool. Because when, you know, Toby does things, he loves getting the positive feedback, because I'll read him comments of what people say to or about him. So it's nice showing that people he physically has never met know who he is, and they're excited to see a 5, 6-year-old kid do things. So I think that's one of the things that will keep this up and running, that, you know, if this ever feels like work to me, I'm going to shut it down. But as long as I'm having fun and enjoying what I'm doing, and it's not detracting from work or family or anywhere in between, then, you know, when we're living in the world of like Web 12.0, and you can now see a cartoon avatar of me in all of our VR headsets, I'll still sound like shit, because I won't spend the money on like voice modulation software.
Right.
But I'll still be around screaming into the void, because
I love it.
It's fun.
It is fun. No, that's what it was DJ Links and I were talking the other day, and we were just kind of chatting about, and we'll do that occasionally and just kind of, you know, decompress about what we're doing. And I was like, look, dude, if it ever becomes not fun, it's fun for me. I enjoy doing this. And I said, if it ever stops being that way, then I'll stop. Otherwise, you'll see me right here doing 10 questions and first appearances and key issues and all that other stuff that I do. So, all right, question 4, before we get into some of the more serious topics, I did want you, for people who don't know your channel, like what type of content will they see? Like kind of give us, I know we've got shop talk. There's a lot of different things that you do, unboxings, but just give a quick overview of the type of content they'll see.
Yeah. So on a normal week, I tend to have stuff drop 5-ish days a week. Monday, once I get caught up on all of my reading, which Monday tends to be like my top 5 books from last week. And the hook line is like, if you missed out on this book, now you know you can pick it up on New Comic Book Day. Tuesday will be my pull list, where I talk way too long about the way too many books that I pick up, and you'll hear me mumble about most indie comics that are coming out under the sun, me getting really excited about a Marvel book or two, and then going, here are the 12 X-Men books that I'm getting this week, and I'm behind. And then Wednesday, other days of the week will be other bits of either unboxing stuff. I'm working on editing some Lego build videos. I've slowly started getting involved in the NFT community, and I've been focusing on projects that have either a game element or a comic element connected to it. So starting next Thursday, my Thursday day video will be NF Thursdays. Nice. Where instead of pitching, like having somebody come in and hype up their project and go, you should give me money, in the same vein as an unboxing video, it's, here's a project that I think it's kind of cool. Disclaimer, I've spent money on it, right? But it's the same thing as like, I bought my funny books or my kids' toys. Now I'm buying a JPEG. But go like, hey, this is something that's kind of neat. If you're a fan of this kind of stuff, get in. And then Thursday nights, starting again next week, myself, J1 Bob, Jellyfingers Comics, and then a handful of other people hop in from time to time, where we do our stream called Shop Talk. And it sucks that it has to be on Thursday night, because it's in that sweet spot between when Lost in Comics ends and Burke Fam starts his stream. But it was the only time that worked for our schedule. And it's the same thing that we're doing right now, or you're doing on 10 Questions. It's 3 dudes who read kids' funny books that have not creative jobs, kind of venting and shooting the shit like you would having conversations with people at your LCS or at a con. And we talk about a book or two, from that week that we like J1 will give us the update of all things Nice House on a Lake. Jelly will be excited about Spider-Man when he's caught up on it, and I'll go, here's the random indie sex book that I read this week. And we've had the last couple of times we were live, Soul Twice, who does cover commissions and does like raffles and stuff on Instagram, has live drawn on our stream. And the first time he did it, I think it's the least productive he's ever been, because we were like, wait, why'd you do that? Wait, what pen is that? Wait, why are you doing that? But we want to bring people like that in too, where like you can put us off to the side and just watch him put his art together, because we all thought it would be cool to watch one of our friends draw. And that's the kind of stuff we get into. I have other shenanigans from time to time. Like sometimes I'll live stream me playing like bad computer games from the 90s. That I think for a while I was playing the Space Quest games. It's like the good, terrible 90s Sierra games of like that and King's Quest and Leisure Suit Larry. Those are the kinds of things that I've got going on. And you can see from behind me, I do Funko Pop stuff too. That I'll do mystery box unboxings or things that I've picked up from like Whatnot auctions. But for the most part, I'll talk about So the things that you see behind me, that would be nice if they were the only ones that I have. But in the closet behind the pride flag is all the stuff that I probably need to sell because I'm not going to put it on the shelf, but I don't want to. That I collect. Let's see, the shelf closest to the short boxes. That's all office stuff. The bottom two shelves here are Masters of the Universe and then Turtles. And then up top is Thor and my Stan Lee collection. So I kind of talk, we'll do stuff about the intersection of stuff there, but I don't have the time like your, key issues or first appearances stuff, or like Bruce and Stephanie comics. He does like, here's the June solicits video. Like, I can barely remember to pull up my pull list more than like 10 minutes before I'm like, oh, I need to do my pull list video. So I will tend to, like, I am not financial advice, and you are not going to get key spec tips from me unless it's me like typing in all caps about Nottingham on my blog. That it's just kind of me going like, hey, I think this is cool, where most of my content is like, if you like this kind of story, you might like this. If not, you won't.
Right. No, I love it, man. All right. So I want to ask this question. I'm going to show some ignorance here, but I think, again, it's kind of as you're in this hobby and you're kind of finding new things. So, and I noticed on Shop Talk, it's coming up. I think the title of it was, can we predict an anime manga you'll like based on your favorite comics? That was kind of the title. And I've started doing this where I do like here's what's coming up this week in graphic novels, omnibus, collected editions, trades, things like that. One of the categories is manga, which everybody should watch and listen to me try to pronounce these names, because it's I struggle to talk anyway at times, and especially saying names. So trying to, say the names of the writers and illustrators on these manga cat books is difficult. So I don't really know what manga is. So
me neither.
Really, you really not know, like, as far as like, can you give me an idea? I just like the manga for dummies.
So think of it, short version. It tends to be a lot of Japan, but East Asia. It's art, and it tends to be graphic novels, although there are some like weekly or monthly serialized issues like a comic book, and it's just used to describe the style of art and the story that you tell. And that you have picked up a manga style graphic novel that if you try and read it like, any white Western European picking up a book like this, the first page will be like, hey, dumbass, you're doing it wrong. Close the book and open it from here. And the pages flow in an order that we would call backwards. And like, I've only read like 4 or 5 different manga titles. Like, I've read Attack on Titan, which is a dystopian world where people are fighting against big giants. But like Dragon Ball Z like all the Dragon Ball stuff has its roots in that kind of storytelling. So we were doing that at the request of like J1. Like, you and I think we read a lot. This man reads like everything that is kids' funny books in any shape or form. So it's one of those things that we're trying to find more intersections in the community. Like, hey, if you're looking for something new to try, here's where you can pick up an interesting book or things like that. So
is the storytelling, is it similar to what, like a normal comic book, or is it very different?
No, it's similar. It tends to embrace, like, I miss the old campy Batman style, like, sound effect balloons, but you'll see like some of that stuff still kind of happen. And I don't think I think all of my manga are at school, but it's, the storytelling and the art are similar mechanic wise, but a lot of your manga will tend to be black and white. only that you'll find a good number of them in color, but most of them are, black and white or grayscale. A lot of them will tend to be like the length of your average paperback book. And, a lot of these titles have been going on longer than a lot of the comic books that a bunch of us are into. So it's one of those, like, broaden our horizons kind of thing. So, like, Jelly and I have looked at J1 and been like, are either of these two on your list for us to talk about? And he's like, yeah, but you can get those. And it's like, okay, good, because I'm struggling to find something, like, skim enough new titles, because I can flip through the first 4 or 5 pages of a comic book for $3 and find if I like it. But these books tend to be, longer, so it's harder to judge them quickly. So the book that really got us going onto this as a legitimate idea, there's a book called Dick Fight Island. And it's precisely what you think it is. So imagine like a Hunger Games style competition, but it's dudes that have to fight with their dicks. And if you come to fruition, then you are out of the competition. And we joked about how I was going to take that book and type it into like a radio play style script. And we would do that one night, like Reader's Theater. And then it just kind of evolved into like, hey, we should talk about this one night because there are a lot of people who are into those things. So if you're somebody who's into those things and you've got a suggestion, or you want to hop on our stream, you want to come join us in the shop one night, then let any of us know. And we're very free to be an open forum for more people to come hang out. Because it's fun. More voices. Well,
like I started seeing, and the titles are kind of crazy. Like there's some, like you said, Dick Fight Island. There's just some crazy titles. And then I've noticed that a lot of times the art is very, you know it when you see it, right? The art when you see it. But, you've got, some ample bosoms usually on the covers.
Yeah.
I don't know. I had no idea. Like I started doing this list and I think this week will be the 4th time I've done it. And I just started noticing these titles and I said, this is a big category. I know people talk about this, but I have no idea what this is.
And you get to the authors and you sound like George W. Bush pronouncing world leader names.
Yes, 100%. Like it's ridiculous. Like I've even gotten now to where I try to stop and break it down. And I'm like, I'll try to split it up into syllables, like where I can Yoshi Yamaguchi, I don't know. I struggle and it's fun. Like I kind of enjoy doing it, but yeah, it's a struggle. So I thank you for answering that. I had no idea. And I thought I saw that title on your channel and I was like, I'm asking him, what is this? Yeah. So, all right. Now, question 6, and this is something that just kind of came to my mind as we were having the conversation and we were talking about mental health. We were talking about, expectations for channels and things like that. So I occasionally see these videos pop up on my feed about how to get to 1,000 subs quickly, how to do, how to grow your YouTube channel.
Yeah.
And I thought it would be interesting from 2 people who've been doing it for a while now, who've had similar channel growth, to talk about what the real YouTube journey is. And, I'm sure there are channels that blow up, for various reasons. But the real YouTube journey, like for me, it's been a slow, steady grind. It's a lot of work, but it's fun. I don't want to say it's work. It is work, but it's fun. I enjoy doing it. And I've self-taught myself how to do a lot of things, how to edit videos, I don't know, just different stuff I was doing anyway, like research-wise, like for first appearances and key issues. I mean, it probably takes me 2 months to actually put that video together from the standpoint of all the research I do and then the contacts I've made, trying to find out where the first appearances are, just a lot of different things that go into it. And so, like these people, when you watch it, make it seem like it's all glamorous. And if you do this, your YouTube channel is going to pop and you're going to have 10,000 subs or you're going to have 1 million subs. And I think that's BS. Like, I think that, you know, the real thing is it's a grind. It's something you got to commit to, be consistent, and those things. And then once you do that, I think you'll ultimately, if you're interesting and doing interesting content, ultimately you'll have some channel growth. And so I just wanted to get it from your perspective. Like, what is it really to have a YouTube channel and to grow and hit 1,000 subs?
I think you've got to have the idea or the thought process of like, it would be cool if I get there. I don't think I ever will, right? I think that's the mindset that we're into, especially if you are creating comic book content, because comic books in and of themselves are a niche category.
Yep.
And if you use any, like I use TubeBuddy to help me put in my hashtags in the video, or whatever they are, the tags, the whatevers. And like comics will always be one of the low ends because we're not gaming, we're not sports highlights, we're not, you know, big pop culture trends, even if we think that we are. And we're not the people like a Journo or a Very Gary or, you know, people who have those, you know, like Gem Mint, who have just been at the game longer than everybody else. And I think one of the ways that some of those very large channels may handicap some of the smaller channels to a degree is like, they're more established, they're going to be the top of the search results on similar things, and people will be like, boom, that's the one-stop shop. So I think consistency will be one of those things that helps, right? The second is watching other people's content. And this is something that I'm usually really good at during the summer and then really bad at during school because I can't watch YouTube videos and comment on them during my planning period. But most of my subscribers were mutual subscribers to one another, that were people who we watch each other's content, were people who we comment on each other's videos, that we do those things, right? Participating in live streams becomes another way where once people see you consistently around, that's where you get some notice, right? And it becomes that like mutual respect of, if we'll watch each other's stuff, right, then we'll make comments, we'll point each other in that direction, and be kind of that word of mouth small business advertising. And then I think collaborations is something else that also helps a lot, because you may have people who watch your channel religiously and have no idea who I am, right? So in theory, I could pick up some subscribers from doing this, and then as I am like, hey, watch me and Jimmy talk about mental health and a bunch of, you know, me trying to teach manga and not knowing what it is, that these kinds of things can help kind of cross the streams. And I think those have been the two things that have become the most successful for me, that I think I have, you know, I will say that hosting auctions for a while heightened the growth of my channel, but those are not the people who are like repeat consumers of my content. Those would be people who would tune in for the auctions and that's it. But for those other instances, it's building those community connections. I'd say if you want to grow faster, then you need to do spec videos. And those are, as you said, research nightmares in and of themselves. So if you have the time to do speculation videos and FOC videos, those get caught by the algorithm, because those are the quick flip money making things that people are trying to find, as they can, you know, buy a $5 book and sell it for $50. But building those connections, and the last thing is, once you have kind of your circle of friends, like the other content creators that you've become close with, use them as a launching pad, right? That this is not a competition, right? That there are some people out there who are like, it's all about me, and that's cool. But for the most part, as we talked about earlier, how this community is more inclusive and accepting than we would think, right? That you can bounce people off, because it's not like we're racing to have the idea for content first. That it'll be one of those things that, like, I bounce an idea off of you and that's cool. And you're like, ooh, I want to do that too. Then we will have our egoistic shit talking battle between friends of like, now who can do this better? So I think those become the things that, you know, a bunch of shameless self-promotion, doing it every day, knowing that even if you're a professional videographer, that your first month of content is going to be dog shit awful, because you have to learn how to ride a bike. Like, I know my biggest detriment is that my two biggest detriments are that I'm long-winded as hell. So good luck me getting a video under 10 minutes, because that's an algorithmic sweet spot. And then number two, Eeyore did not take his antidepressants ever, and that's my voice, right? And like, I could turn on like high energy fake me, but that's not who I am. So maybe if I were more exciting, it would do things. But I think like embrace the idea that it's a marathon, not a sprint, that you might have something that goes viral. And if you do, ride that wave, like keep putting out content, keep being engaging, doing that stuff. And then I think the last, that this is a do as I say, not as I do, because I'm also bad at this. Anytime somebody comments on your video, reply to it.
Yeah.
Because that will also help the algorithm shoot you up, because it will treat every single comment response that you give as an individual comment. And that's something else that makes you smarter than the YouTube machine. I've dabbled in shorts a little bit. I know that shorts get astronomically higher views than everything else, but if I can't do anything in 10 seconds, I don't know what in the hell makes me think I can do something in 20 or 10 minutes, let alone 20 seconds.
Right.
But just kind of embrace your grind, shamelessly promote yourself, be that salesperson that you need to be, because anybody who puts eyes on you is feedback. All feedback is good, even if somebody leaves. Like the harshest comment I ever got was about boring somebody to sleep, and I was like, here's a link, timestamp to me actually falling asleep on this live stream and this live stream and this live stream. So you're welcome. So yes. I think kind of let the people who aren't going to enjoy what you're doing talk their shit, and just kind of like look and see if there's anything constructive you can take from any comment, and go from there.
I think that's dead on, man. That's kind of been my experience is, you know, I try to ride the high waves. I try to push through the low waves. You know, some days are better than others as far as views. And I don't even really anymore. Like, I pay a lot of attention to the analytics just because I'm an analytical person.
Yeah.
And I pay a lot of attention to that. But I've almost quit looking at how many subs I have and how many, at least I'll do it once a week. Because it really for my mental health, you know, because it became one of those things that was almost like addictive. I was sitting there constantly checking, do I have one more sub, you know, and that's not what I'm doing it for, you know.
Yeah.
A lot of it is stuff I'm already doing for myself. It's just I record a video about it now. That's what first appearances and key issues are. That's what, you know, the new release omnibus, and that's what that is. I'm looking for that stuff anyway. So now I'll just share it. Here it is, you know, and hopefully you enjoy it, and hopefully it helps you some, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, cool. All right, so let's go to question 7. And question 7 is explain this Instagram post. Okay. Now, what I try to do is I try to comb through Instagram posts and find something where my reaction is, what is this?
Okay.
And have you explain it. Okay.
I'm terrified now.
So no, it's not bad. I mean, it's just, I don't know what this is. I want you to explain it to me.
Okay. So I've been listening to a lot of D&D podcasts. That's something else that I've started doing thanks COVID. And the first one that everybody flocks to is Critical Role. because they're the big dog, that they had like the most hype on Twitch, and then they turned into a podcast. So I listened to Dum Dums and Dice, which is, it's a core cast of 3 people with guest characters that come in from time to time, and they keep making 2 references over and over in like the first 5 seasons. One of them is whenever the guest character, his name is Guy Bradford, but he plays the character Ranger the Ranger. He will just randomly start singing the chorus to Teenage Dirtbag by Wheatus.
Yeah.
And then I think it's in like a couple of episodes before he ends up dying in like season 6. So spoiler alert, Ranger the Ranger dies. But so does everybody, and they go to hell and come back, so he might not be really dead. They make several references to the scene where they dance the Mamushka from the Addams Family film. This all culminates in one episode of the podcast where he is singing that while somebody is dancing the Mamushka at the wedding. And that was one of those things that it was so dumb when I heard it that I immediately had to stop what I was doing, and I recut a clip of Ranger the Ranger singing Teenage Dirtbag in with Teenage Dirtbag by Wheatus under the scene where they dance the Mamushka from the Addams Family. That's how my brain works. Like, you know, my panic trigger is definitely noises, but then I'm very much a dumb brain where it's like, this is funny, I want to make the visual of it, and if I'm gonna do it in my head, then right, everything's content, baby.
That's right.
So I did that, and you know, tweeted it out, and then shared it in the Discord, and people were like, "This is glorious," because that episode also came out like 3 years ago.
Yeah.
So it's like I'm constantly their kid opening a present on Christmas Day. So there you go. You can watch and listen to Wheatus, Ranger the Ranger, sing Teenage Dirtbag while you watch the Mamushka from Addams Family and go, I forgot about that scene.
That's
I probably
awesome.
will again. But that's how my brain works.
Yeah, no, I saw that and I was like, what is this? Like, what in the world is this? So thank you for explaining that Instagram post. So, and you know, we were talking before we came on about Stranger Things. I asked Poser if he had watched Stranger Things yet, because there is the sickest scene in the last episode, the ones that just dropped yesterday, of this character playing Master of Puppets to essentially summon these bat creatures in the underworld. And it was awesome. And one of the things you mentioned, D&D, a lot of the season, this past season, is focused around D&D. And my brother-in-law plays D&D, loves it. I got a nephew that plays it, absolutely loves it. But yeah, they're called the Hellfire Club, and they play D&D. I'm trying to convince Poser to watch Stranger Things because I love it so much. And he has not seen the first episode of it.
Yeah, so coming in mid-July, Poser reacts to Stranger Things.
I love it. See, like, content.
Yeah. If I'm going to watch it, I might as well film myself watching it.
That's right. I wish I would have filmed myself when he started playing Master of Puppets last night, because it was the most metal thing. I swear to God, it was so awesome. My daughter looked at me because I was, you know, going, Master, you know, like I'm an insane, you know, Metallica fan. That's just me, though. But when that came out, and I love that show, like I love it. It is one of my favorite shows ever of all time. And it's been, I was telling Poser, it's been like a kid, you know, a family show for us because we've watched it since it first came out. My kids were younger, and you've kind of watched these kids grow up on the show. So anyway, very cool. It does.
I'm texting my wife back really fast.
No, you go right ahead. Text away. So while you're texting, I do want to ask, because these last 3 questions are just more kind of get to know you, and I like asking these questions. So your favorite era of comics of all time? Like for you, if you had to say, Jimmy, the greatest era of comics all time is this era, what would it be?
So up until watching your interview with No Coast, the answer hands down is Silver Age, right? That the Silver Age has created everything that we are living in now. But I think and go watch the interview, because Left Coast's or No Coast's answer is more in depth and way more articulated than I could be, because I'm like, the X-Men are cool, and so is Captain America, and DC exists, I guess. My answer is gonna be the development of Image Comics. And I think, like, indie comics existed before Image Comics did, right? Like, you can point to a handful of small batch publishers, but their problem, with the exception of like Fantagraphics, is that they tried to publish on a large scale really fast and became financially insolvent. Like Atlas Comics, right? Published like 4 titles, max of 3 issues a piece, and they folded. Or like Star Comics did some stuff, and Marvel was like, oh, you're doing good shit. You stole it. I think the development of indie comics is what opened the door for the explosion of indie comics on a more sustainable scale than what people tried to do in the past. That you're seeing new publishers to this day enter the market left and right, and they're doing it by publishing 1, maybe 2 books a month, and then slowly growing, right? And I think Scout Comics is a good model of that, where they started slow, and then, you know, they're putting out 8 to 10 books a month because they've got 2 imprints now. I'm a big homer for Mad Cave Studios, and they did the same thing, where they dedicated themselves to creating 6-issue arcs, and now they're having series that are expanding in multiple directions, and some of them are going to become like digital only, in the same way that Marvel and DC has done, which I think is brilliant, because it's a way to minimize, you know, printing and distribution costs, that you can put it out digitally and then put it, you know, in a physical form on the back end, and fools like me will buy it.
Right.
So I think with the birth of Image Comics, you know, and it's now 30 years ago since those Image books are coming out this year, celebrating their 30th anniversary, that, granted, they start the game with a stacked deck of people who left Marvel and DC to create that imprint. But I think once they started and kind of showed themselves as being a market force, telling stories that big publishers told them no, they couldn't write, I think that's why we are living in a, you know, the comic book market is oversaturated to a massive degree, but it's because they, like the entire, you know, fiction market, they don't care about trying to sell a book to every single person. They know who their niche audience is going to be, and they're going to produce books for that niche audience, right? So I know if I want to find some really good horror comics, that I can look at Vault, I can look at Source Point Press, and I can look at Scout's Black Caravan imprint, right? If I want my sexy books, I can buy my Vampirella and Lady Death and Nyx from Dynamite. That, you know, Image is now in the same position as Marvel and DC, where they've got the financial resources to produce all kinds of books all over the place. And you're starting to see other indie publishers take that leap. Like when Boom Studios, who does a bunch of horror books, when they put out the book Maw, that book, as that was one of the ones that I knew I would read it. Jelly and J1 picked that book up at my recommendation, and they were both like, yeah, I didn't think I would like this book from the solicit, but damn, it's good. It's a horror book that is also a manifesto about like sexual assault, the way women are demonized. Like, it's a modern feminist masterpiece. And we all looked at it and we were like, why do you think Boom put out a book like this when, you know, they've been living in the land of like Power Rangers has been their moneymaker, or some of those other things. So it's been nice that you're seeing more voices in the marketplace now take risks, be successful, and tell those stories, because they know that they're not trying to get everybody who wants to buy every Spider-Man book. They're getting somebody who wants to read a 6-issue mini and then move on to the next one. So I think, while the correct answer is the Silver Age, I think the true answer to me is probably early 90s in the development of Image, because it legitimizes what people before them tried to do, but without the money and the pre-established names. Because if Todd McFarlane or, you know, a handful of other people don't have their names on those first Image books, they probably go the age of Atlas and Star of dissolving. So while they were playing a game, you know, with some extra power-ups when they started, I definitely think it's been the last 30 years post-Image where we're seeing more voices and we're not seeing the same story told over and over again. And I think that that's a good thing. And, you know, don't get me wrong, I'm not bashing on Marvel and DC, but those have those established names. I know, you know, I'm going to love a Spider-Man book unless Nick Spencer is writing it because he destroyed Spider-Man for me, right? I know I can swing a dead cat and get caught up on a Batman arc at any point in time, right? I know what I'm getting into for those, but I know that those titles are not going to scratch an itch of something different for me in a same way that a book like Safe Sex or What You Promised Me Darkness or Maw or, you know, Nottingham do. That I just like the diversity of being able to find a book literally for anybody that's coming out. And I think it makes it easier to get people into the hobby now, where they're like, I don't know what's been going on in Spider-Man for the last 10 years. Shit, neither do I, and I still read it. But, you know, anytime somebody looks at me and they're like, I think I want to get into comics, do you have any recommendations? Instead of shooting from the hip and going, here are all of my favorite series, my first question back to them is, well, when you read fiction, what's your favorite book? What's your favorite author? Why do you like that? Okay, here are my recommendations based off of that I can go like school librarian on it and help push an audience towards a book that I fit them, because we all have our different passions and pleasures in what we read. And I don't think we would have that, you know, unless something successful like Image pops up and shows that the market can be more competitive than Marvel versus DC.
Right. No, and that's a great answer, because I love Image. You know, I think they put out great titles. And like, even when I do first appearances and key issues, you know, I kind of break it down into covers and, you know, second prints and one shots, and then DC and Marvel. And then I have indies. And I have considered many times of taking Image out and actually making it its own category because of the type of stuff it does. Because it's really like them, Boom, IDW, Dark Horse, really, those are, you know, they're kind of big companies. Let me ask you this. You know, Substack is something that a lot of writers and, you know, people have gone to. Do you think that is like the new iteration of what Image did 30 years ago? Do you think that will take for these creators, you know, where they can go and do what they want, but I guess really the real reason they're doing it is for the money, you know, I mean, because they can control their revenue.
Well, I think it's more about intellectual property than revenue.
Okay, that makes sense.
But I think those two are interrelated, right? That they want to be able to continue that revenue stream, right? Like, one of the reasons why, you know, we get that big news break that Tynion is leaving DC with the exception of Nice House on the Lake is because he didn't have any control of that IP. So I think what's happening on Substack is the expansion of a new marketplace that allows writers to experiment with the things that they want to go on a financial ledge to create, because they know that they have the audience, right? anytime Tynion puts out a book, I'm going to pick it up because I've liked everything that he's done, right? Same thing is true with like Zdarsky, Kelly Thompson, Snyder, those kinds of things. Where I think it becomes interesting is that I think Substack may be the equivalent to Kickstarter a little bit, where we've seen titles that are published on Kickstarter then get picked up by a publisher and put out to a wider audience. We've already seen Substack content get published through a different publisher, like Scott Snyder's like We Have Demons started as a Substack exclusive, and then he was able to pitch it to, I think that's a Dark Horse book.
It's a Dark Horse book, yeah.
So I think it gives them broader freedom to basically test a book in front of an audience of people who are loyal to them, and then pitch it to a publishing company if it picks up. Like I pay for one Substack subscription, and it's Travis Gibb and Orange Cone Productions, only because I've backed literally every Kickstarter project that he's put out. So he does like Voodoo Nations and Broke Down in Four Dead Bodies. He was the point person on Cthulhu Invades Oz. So I decided to throw money his way as a supporter because he's going to get my money anyway. And in the same way that I look at Kickstarters, I look at what kind of benefits do I get. So in addition to the same models, like you get an exclusive book or an exclusive cover on a release through his Substack, I and other of his subscribers are basically producers on a comic that he's going to put out on Kickstarter if his supporters decide to put it out. Where he's like, hey, here's what I think about the story. Here are 3 options we can go in a writing direction. What do you think? So I think it becomes a cool way for consumers to directly support an artist or an author. And I think it becomes a new way for them to engage with their fan base specifically through the Substack. So I think you'll see some growth there. But if Scott Snyder, hopped on he used Substack mostly as like the gatekeeping to the classes he was teaching anyway. Once he went from those teaching things to, I'll do an exclusive book. And now I think he published We Had Demons first. And then I think Closet was also a Substack exclusive for Tynion that then got put out. And the same thing is true, I think, with Public Domain and Chip Zdarsky, where I think if it becomes their laboratory and a test market, then I think it means we'll see better books hit the open market.
No, I think that's a great answer, and I think that's great insight. I love the answer to your question. I wasn't expecting the Image Comics answer. I think that's a great answer, and I agree immensely. All right, so 2 more questions here. Number 9, this is another it's become one of my favorite questions to ask. And I want to hear a story about either your most epic find as a collector or your most epic failure as a collector. You choose. Epic find, epic failure. Lay it on me.
I mean, epic failure will be a short answer. I have like 15 short boxes of comics that I've bought in like 3 years, right? So like my eyes are bigger than my stomach. So most of what I have is not going to be the $1 billion books. It's going to be the books that my kids sell at a garage sale when I'm dead for $0.25 a piece, along with the books that are good. My epic find, I bought an ASM 300 for $240 from my buddy Umpty Scratch, who does some YouTube content, but does a lot of stuff on Instagram. He has a website that's like the TV guide of live streams and stuff for like Funko Pop and collectors and comic collectors and stuff. And in a parody of Whatnot, he put up his own store and called it Scratch Knot. and he had an ASM 300 up there. And I was like, yeah, it could be just the pages and no staples or anything like that and falling apart. And I already put it away on the bottom box where I'd show it. And I was like, yeah, it's mine, dibs. And then he sent me some really bad pictures of it. And I was like, okay, yeah, this is probably a $200 book. I'm going to send it to get pressed and cleaned and then graded. But looking at it in its condition now, pre-press and clean, I think it's an 8.5.
Oh, wow.
So that's going to be my, like, if the Filipino mob tries to come after me because I bought into a scam online, sell that book, or my kids will sell it for $5 because it's in a fancy plastic case.
Right. Right. Instead of the quarter, it'll go for $5. Yeah.
But that's my epic find.
I love it. All right. So question 10, any hobbies outside of comics, like we're just collecting in general? I mean, are you a sports guy? I find it interesting that you coach debate. So it's, but any hobbies outside of, out of this hobby?
Can you identify what those are now on the wall behind the pride flag?
I can't see that. I can't see it.
I am a huge soccer fan.
Oh, okay.
So, through child number 1 and 2, we had season tickets to Sporting Kansas City. And then, with 3, you don't want to take 3 kids to a soccer game, let alone out in public. But I'm a huge MLS fan that I will always watch all the games. Premier League games I will catch from time to time, based on time zone and being awake, depending on when those are played. I'm an avid Chiefs fan. Baseball, I follow tangentially only because it's 162 games. So like I'll watch it, but baseball is boring to watch because it's forever, but I love it. But when you have kids who are like, this is boring. Yeah, I got
right.
But sports fan, I play Dungeons and Dragons with a couple of folks that I met through the YouTube comic community. And then, what takes up most of my time, if it's not parenting, I'm very active in the high school speech and debate community. So not necessarily a hobby because it's an extension of my job, but it's what paid for a good part of my college. It's what, like, I am paid at the same level as a varsity football coach in my district, which is ridiculous, but thank you. That it's still a rush to me in the same way that we, look for epic finds in a dollar bin, doing research to find like the best argument or something that we think we can have a aha gotcha moment. Like, I still get the same rush that I got when I was competing in high school. I still get that same excitement where it's like, haha, I found something to be able to use. So I think that's mostly it. Like, I occasionally play computer and video games, like I said, but I got kids. So
I understand. So you have kids.
Yeah. I can't play violent things. So we play a lot of Just Dance, which is daddy going like,
yeah, I like it. Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, I remember my Just Dance days. Poser, man, I thoroughly enjoyed this, man. Thank you so much for coming on. I had a blast. I hope you enjoyed yourself. And guys, if you're watching this, go check out our boy Poser. He fun channel. I think you can see here, fun guy. I'll link all his stuff down in the description below. Thanks for hanging out with us for a little bit today. We really appreciate it. This has been 10 Questions.